Good morning, good afternoon to all of you, and thank you for joining our webinar. I'm Jamie Wyatt with Yuvos, and we're here to talk about how to modernize your senior care business processes with cloud applications. So I have a couple of my counterparts here with me today. I'll start off by asking Kevin and then Mike to introduce themselves. I'll give a quick introduction and we'll talk about the topic for today. So Kevin, if you would, please.
Yeah, so thanks for joining us today. Kevin Gardner from Yuvos. Been here over just a little over a year and been in the healthcare industry for about 15 years and have spent a number of years inside the Oracle ecosystem, and just excited to be here and share a little bit of information with you guys on senior care.
Thanks, Kevin. Mike?
Mike from North America, 6+ years, and I've got 20+ years of in the Oracle ecosystem, many of that in healthcare. So again, as looking forward to the presentation and answering any questions you may have.
All right, thanks, Mike. And I'm Jamie Wyatt. I've been in healthcare for about 35 years now, and in the Oracle PeopleSoft ecosystem for about 20 years. And my background is specifically in finance and supply chain in healthcare. As we go on, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to submit your questions using the toolbar, and we'll get to those, and we'll have some time at the end to take your questions as well. So let's get started with today's program and start to talk a little bit about the subject and more specifically today's agenda. So first off, we're going to talk a little bit about the challenges in the industry, what we commonly see and hear, a lot of the reading that we do and that we gather as to what we're hearing from you and your peers in the industry, and hearing from our customers is importantly. And a lot of that is they're looking as to how they can leverage technology to address some of the challenges and shortcomings that they have. And they have questions around how to address infrastructure and costs and customizations and things like that. We'll also talk really about how you leverage that technology through a results-based design and delivery methodology to ensure that you get the result that you're looking for, and how that'll ultimately help you increase your capacity by allowing your team to do more and have access to more, and even an offer for us to help evaluate where you sit today and how these solutions and technologies might be able to assist you moving forward. So let's take a few minutes and talk a little bit about this, and talk about the challenges in the industry and what we commonly see. So, when we talk to folks out there in the industry, Kevin, Mike, and I, a lot of what we hear and what we hear, particularly in the last couple of years, is COVID and the movement of work from home. In those cases, if you could, if the system was capable of doing so, they exposed a lot of inefficiencies, also exposed a lot of inefficiencies and business issues relative to the organization, because you had issues in retaining, recruiting people, understanding what your workforce looked like, and having the appropriate tools to manage the workforce. And really, if you flip it around, think about, from a recruiting standpoint, your candidates, and how that world looked to them, and how they struggled getting through any type of tools and the limited scope and utility that you had out there. So an organization like the LHC Group recognized a lot of that early on and identified that they needed to change. They needed a digital transformation, that it was the wrecking ball, that they needed to change their business model based on their growth, based on the opportunities that they were seeing coming at them. But just as importantly, recognizing the ability or the inability to provide information to a spread organization where people can't just go to the next office and interact and take care of some of these things. So what have we seen, at the broad level, everybody in healthcare knows that these are the big issues. This hasn't changed. So these are the multiplying factors relative to COVID and what you're dealing with and what we hear from organizations on a routine basis. So how are organizations addressing these things, addressing COVID and addressing that technological need to move forward in what they do? Because when you look at what you're stressing under, you have a growing senior population. We're going to talk about the baby boomers here in a moment. They do need, more specialty care. They want stay-at-home options, which really creates more service options and service requirements from you as a delivery organization. That brings a lot of questions around cost and profitability in those areas. And how do you manage the people side of things? Recruiting, again, turnover and retention. Parker Life is a customer that we work with. And one of the things that Parker Life did well before COVID pandemic was they moved to the cloud. And one of the reasons they moved to the cloud was they saw a need to offer more models, stay at home and other types of services. And as such, they needed a better solution to provide the tools to the staff and the flexibility for the staff to communicate within the system. So Parker Life was able to take advantage of the Oracle ERP and HCM solution to grow the organization twice the size, manage the recruiting process, but do it in a coordinated fashion, which was a huge victory for them and huge value. So when we look at what we hear from organizations like yourself, a lot of you're struggling with a whole host of things, right? Whether it be regulatory compliance and everything around your strict staffing requirements, so that you can keep the floors open, keep the facilities open. How do you manage that? How do you manage the fact that employees are burning out? Because that's a gross understatement, as we all know. Folks are really struggling. There was a really good article just this weekend in the Washington Post talking about those very things. And if you look at somebody like Garden Spot Villages, what they did was they, again, similar to Parker Life in the sense that they recognized they wanted to grow because they needed to offer more services, but they couldn't grow the staff. They weren't going to grow the team. And what the finance organization at Garden Spot was able to do was they were able to essentially double the organization size and manage it with the same staff and still reduce the effort to do their monthly close and consolidation process by half. So it was a win across the board at Garden Spot because they were able to take advantage of the value and see the results within the technology. But there's no doubt in your world the demand's going to increase. As we talk, baby boomers, 10,000 a day, it says here, that was in Forbes, almost 9.5 million by 2060. So the volumes are going to increase, the opportunity is going to increase. But at the same time, the difficulties, the operational issues aren't going to get better unless you take a step to move forward. And how you move forward is you solve it using technology. One of the major things organizations are looking at is how do they solve it from a technology standpoint with the patients, the residents that you care for, so that they have the necessary technology. But it's also about putting technology in the hands of your team moving forward. So with that, as we talk about how you use technology to address the challenges, I'm going to turn things over to Kevin so he can take over and let him go from there.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Jamie, so much. And, obviously this environment that we're in, really, especially the last 2 years, right, has accelerated, many of these challenges that you've heard Jamie talk about and many of what you guys are experiencing today. So as we kind of look at some of these challenges, right, and move into some of this, I'd like to show you just a quick chart that kind of really jumps in and shows what's driving, some of these challenges. And so when you look at this breakdown, you've got time that's on there. So you've got constraints of your actual on-premise, IT infrastructure, data, coming from different sources and being able to process that data, looking at, the challenges from your operating model possibly, and some of the things that, get in the way of accessing certain stuff, and then your people and culture, right? And everything that really is taking the time from an organizational standpoint, and the change, that basically, is that line there that we see, and that's coming from areas of competition that's driving a lot of change. We know that there's a war on talent, right, that's out there. The technology convergence and the speed in which technology is changing business obviously is a big deal. And then, the compliance issue really is a big deal from, the last 2 years. It's always been an issue in this industry, but really more or less the things that have taken place over the last 2 years have driven a lot of that as well. And one of the organizations that has really experienced, many of these changes is Care One. And I'm going to ask Mike to jump in here and share the background and kind of story on Care One.
Sure. Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, Care One is a family-owned organization. They've got a network of 60 post-acute care nursing and assisted living facilities, primarily in the Northeast. And they do continuity of care across every stage of a loved one's journey. So they, which includes assisted living, post-acute rehabilitation, memory care, home care, long-term care, long-term acute care, and hospice. So they were in an on-prem solution, which was really what this chart is showing. They had an on-prem technology that was older, and they knew that in order to support their growth, they needed to move on. And so they looked at Oracle Cloud, and they were an old EBS customer, and they decided to do this. And they decided to do this at the height of COVID. So this whole implementation was even done during the height of the COVID situation, and was done fine. Some of the benefits that they got for sure was they were able to transform their systems to support their growth, so they could take advantage of the updates that happen 4 times a year on the new system to get new functionality, which they viewed as key of their business, where on the on-prem side, you have to wait and upgrade maybe every 3 years, and it's a major undertaking. They also implemented a new HCM solution, and that was really important to their hiring, recruiting, and retaining of their talent. Got a lot of benefits out of that. And they also got real-time automated reporting for their business, which they had not had in the past. So again, those are just a few things that they achieved as benefits. But again, we're able to discern the in their life and have. Thanks, Kevin.
All right, thank you, Mike. And so when you look at this axis here, right, when you look at what time and the things affecting the change, you really have that challenge of the ability to respond, which brings us really to where we're at in the benefits that we see as customers are looking at trying to transform the organization and really drive, from this on-prem solution to like a cloud technology. And so these are really kind of where the rubber meets the road, where the areas of business are really mostly affected. And this is really where we're seeing the changes, right? So when you look at like the improve close cycle time by 50%, right? We've got a situation here, with Garden Spot, another one of our clients who really wanted to close that gap on the amount of time that was taking them to close their books. And they were basically able to go, we're going to show you an example here, kind of down the road of what one of these reports look like, but they were able to cut that close time in half, right? And so these are very impactful, numbers as it relates to how the business operates. When you look at, the contract spend, bringing that down by 30%, right? And some of these other areas like the employee satisfaction and retention, which we know is a big area of importance for, this industry right now and the things that are taking place. You've also got, another client, you heard me talk about, you're seeing the statistic of reducing the time to hire. As Jamie and I are talking kind of throughout our conversation today, there's a lot of these, commonalities that you see. And Parker Life is another client that really was looking at, driving their workforce. They had some challenges with growth. So they basically took their organization from 300 to 900 employees over a 2-year period. So they had this hyper growth. So reducing that time to hire was really important to them. And they were able to do that through leveraging some technology. And, one of the other areas that you'll see as we kind of talk here is that recruitment process, the leveraging a talent pool and keeping, these possible candidates from ghosting you. So let's move the next slide here, Jamie, really quick, and kind of take a look at how basically technology is assisting, this industry. So when we look at, mobile anywhere, right, and enabling basically people inside the organization to manage the business, to access reporting, whether they're inside or outside the business is a big deal, right? Driving, things to the edge of care. We've got technologies that are really help assisting organizations do that. So when you look at, the benefits of like a cloud technology, the self-service is something that's really helping a lot of industries out and freeing up, areas like HR and finance. And then you have, chatbots, which are also able to go and pull information and feed that to various resources. You're really able to drive and improve on businesses process in a lot of these areas. But more importantly, what organizations really like and what they're looking for is this ability to grab, reporting in real time, and not being able to just see that reporting in the office, but outside the office, in between locations, right? Being able to have that mobile access is really important. But ultimately, where we're seeing, technology really help out is just taking those business processes today and improving upon them and making it more simplified for management to access information, to make changes inside the organization, or even pivot the organization in some different areas. And Harbin Clinic, is a great example of this. They were really looking at driving reporting to physicians to give them more visibility. And this was important to them, that physicians really had access to being able to take a look at the calculations of cost allocation, and to give them an opportunity to access self-service reporting so that they could, take a look at some of these things. And what that was doing really was bringing efficiency to the back office and streamlining those processes. And ultimately, that's what it did, is it provided an end-to-end automation for their cost allocation. And more importantly, it delivered a solution that allowed every physician to kind of review reports and kind of drill down from their side and take a look at these things if required. As we kind of move on here, taking a look at really where we're able to kind of help drive value is when organizations, are in this situation where they're trying to change, they're trying to transform the organization. They've got budget possibly to invest in these systems. Oftentimes, what we've seen over the years is a lot of organizations fail to capture the benefits of moving from like an on-prem solution to the cloud, right? And if you're going to spend this type of investment, it really is important to see what things are derived and where that value is given back, to the business. And so this is an area where we've really helped customers kind of realize this investment and bring some return on investment back to the organization. And you look at like examples here: process automation, system adoption, which is really important because when you're investing in this technology, looking at like system adoption and what type of value that brings back to the organization, you want to know if your users are leveraging the technology And when you're able to see a report on who's accessing and what areas they're using, you're able to really understand whether there's a training gap or there's a business process gap. And so collecting information in certain areas, key performance indicators, really allows you to do that. Of course, you see like audit and compliance and information output. Well, ultimately, what we're trying to do here is really take the organization from a reactive mode and giving them access to technologies that allow you to be proactive, to really kind of, plan out and look at the business maybe in different ways, taking those technicalities and really driving that business value, and ultimately removing that guesswork and providing information that gives you that factual information to make calculated business decisions. So what's interesting here is we've developed over the years a number of reports, and that's not just different KPIs, but also dashboards that allow you to have access to some of this stuff. So, we love the opportunity to drive that value for the business. And so when you look at, driving transformation in your organization, we're really not just replacing processes, but you're revolutionizing the business. You're able to bring speed and value to what the business is doing. But more importantly, allowing that insight, oftentimes bring retention to your employees because they have updated systems to be able to leverage. And so this is really kind of a breakdown of what we're taking a look at in the impact of the business. So, it starts at the top with that best practice automation, all the way down to, managing candidate and having access to self-service. And so the impact of that as it relates to business processes is it really brings the opportunity to leverage not just information inside the organization, but provides that mobile enablement, right? And we're seeing chatbots really help out in that area. So if you take the HR organization, when it comes to engaging your candidates, being able to use chatbots to push them, in the process of applying for a job, right? Maybe giving them the open recs or requesting that resume. And what we're finding is, inside this industry, as there's a war on talent and competition is fierce, you may have some of these guys that are looking at opportunities inside your organization that are outside of business hours. So this is really where chatbots bring a lot of value, is because they can engage that person, let's say at 10:30 at night, while nobody's inside the office, and it really personalizes that experience for that candidate and so the organization. It's also used internally as it relates to, reporting. So Ecumen has a really interesting story in how they leverage chatbots here. Is they wanted to basically push out information to their suppliers. They wanted to be able to provide their suppliers with, statuses of invoice, and basically take that interruption out of their AP clerks and give some of these vendors access to their current status. So what that did is it enhanced the vendor's ability to kind of see and know everything in regards to where the process is at, where they can expect to see these invoices. It eliminated time and effort that was coming from, the AP clerks, and really gave them an opportunity amongst their 18 locations to really process and provide invoice at the local level, which is awesome.
Hey, Kevin, I just want to jump in and add one other
Sure.
comment. When we talk about those chatbots and digital assistants and automation and the like, one of the things that we hear, and it couples with that, how do you make the employee, the team member's life better? When we start to talk about pushing scheduling out to these, to your mobile device, to your smartphone, giving it the ability for a team member to look at their schedule, maybe pick up other shifts, in the day and age of needing to fill additional shifts, showing folks what's available out there so they can grab those additional shifts and have that flexibility is really something that is gaining momentum and gaining interest, because it shows that you're focused on your team members, your employees, and enhancing their work environment and moving them forward, not just expecting more from them in the time that they have.
And that's a great point, Jamie. I mean, as we take a look at, this transformation, it really is about modernizing, the workplace, right? And a lot of these candidates, this generation, they come to our organization, they're leveraging technology in their lives through an application of some sort, applications on their phones. And so being able to have that same, user experience inside your organization is very important. So, when we look at really realizing the business value, you heard me talk earlier about some of these KPIs that we really help capture, for organizations and really drive that value. These are some examples of what some of those reports may look like. So, days to period of closure, right? If you look at this, example of the report here in the top left-hand corner, you really see that this organization went from a 10-day close down to, a 2.5-day close, which was a 75% faster cycle time, which is really impressive. And, that flows all the way down into various areas. I mean, even when it comes to the manual journal entries, right? Being able to take that and automate that process, by 45% to 50%, that's a big deal. These are things where really the impact is brought back, to the organization. That time is able to be leveraged in other areas that may be of more importance, but more importantly, it's making your workforce more effective and allowing the organization to make some really good decisions based upon real-time information and reporting for inside the organization. So, people ask, how do we do that? How do we capture what's important from a KPI perspective? And it's really kind of a simple process. As we sit down, we'll see what's important, what areas, what are some key performance indicators the organization wants to track. And that really starts with identifying, those areas, and then taking a look at where you're at today and, setting that benchmark. What's the baseline and benchmark that we want to capture, throughout this process. And really, we're going to help you understand where that ownership comes in, what we're going to do for you in regards to providing the actual configuration of the KPI, and then really what is your responsibility as an organization to keep up with those areas. And then ultimately, you have that final measurement of what the output is, and capturing that information, and really leveraging that not just through an implementation process, but obviously beyond using the application. And what you're going to see, and what we've seen actually from our experience, is a lot of these companies are able to improve upon the value of leveraging that application inside their business. It really takes them to that next level of improving processes from inside the organization, if you will. So as we move on here and look at what we hear, right? You heard Jamie talk earlier about we digest a fair amount of material, and then obviously we talk with our clients. And it's interesting, a lot of the feedback that we get, and again, you heard me talk about earlier, some of the patterns, that we see where the needs are at. And this is really a breakdown of what we hear and what is loudest from people and where they need help, right? And so when you look at, again, the challenge of the workforce, being able to rapidly recruit so you can expand the business and really support the growth that's there, onboarding, right? Having that opportunity to take a look at your workforce and do some planning as needs change, as locations grow, as things adapt, as we have different areas where, the loads may change. And then ultimately, right, looking at budgeting and planning and costing to really open up the organization to a more effective planning is really important. So these are some of the things that we hear from a lot of our customers and areas that they need help, and where cloud technology is really assisting them. Jamie, is there anything you want to add to this as we look at and kind of hear our feedback from those that we work with?
Yeah, great question, Kevin. And I think really it's the last line that I keep on coming to. Well, if you will, it's the first bullet point and the last bullet point. People want to work with things that they're familiar with. Well, they're familiar with their mobile phone, their smartphone, whatever you want to call it, right? And they want to have access anytime and pretty much from anywhere. And the thought of being able to do things like ask your phone about the status of an invoice, or the status of a requisition, or the status of your vacation request. Those are things that are very much in the forefront of people saying, well, why can't I just use my phone to do these? So we're hearing more and more about that, and that technology is there. We have customers doing it today, and it really is because the users are doing this in their own personal lives. They recognize that these tools are out there and available, and they're saying, well, why can't we apply these moving forward? And I think that that's a critical aspect of the conversation going on, because adoptability increases because they're familiar with those navigation tools.
Yep, very good. So many of you may be familiar with IDC, right? They're really a great organization that really looks at human capital management, and they evaluate systems, and they get lots of great feedback. And so one of the recent studies that they did was just really the impact of migrating an HRIS system to the cloud, right? And having access to some of the tools that are there. And really what the outcome was is really kind of fascinating and interesting, in the fact that oftentimes they see that the cost of ownership of moving from an on-prem to the cloud really is lowered, right? You see a cut in that cost. It reduces the burden that places upon your IT, right? You're now having lines of business that can produce reports inside the system versus having to go out to IT to have them build that. And you see that ultimately improves, the user experience and allows them to have access to more information. But it's interesting, as you look at the bottom here, it says nearly 40% of respondents said it was an improvement on employee retention. So you see this as you are able to provide tools to the employees to give them access to information to help the business move along, in various areas. It really does improve that experience and help retain those clients. So very interesting. I'll show you just a couple more things that came out of this report here as we
hey, Kevin, I just wanted to make one comment, because it's interesting. I read something this morning around that lower total cost of ownership, that those organizations that have moved from an on-premise solution to a cloud solution have seen a 2/3 reduction in their power requirements for their data center.
Wow.
I don't know if that's a significant dollar impact, but it does show that there's a reduction in the power utilization in the organization. So
wow,
entirely odd value proposition, but it is an additional savings potential.
Absolutely. And I mean, just kind of building off what Jamie just talked about, here's really some more information that shows the benefits of investing in moving your applications in the cloud, right? It's an overall improvement on your processes that are inside the organization, right? It's helping provide that quicker turnaround time and more efficiency, not just in HR, but also in your finance department. And so some of these statistics are really kind of eye-opening when you look at 68% reduction in payroll time processing, a 44% reduction in time to hire. I mean, these are all areas where in senior care, oftentimes organizations are struggling in being able to have access to information. It's interesting. I'll share something. I've got a really good friend actually that's inside the senior care industry. He's an executive director inside of a large organization. He was just talking about, inside where he's at, they're about 3 months behind in some of their reporting that they do. And that reporting obviously affects his bonus structure and some of the other things that are there. And it was just interesting, as he talked about some of this challenge. Just in December, he got his bonus from a September, type situation. And so really being able to have access to that information is important. He was saying that he feels like he's kind of operating, a couple months behind, which he says that if there is an opportunity to improve upon something or change something inside the organization, it really keeps them a couple months behind versus having some real-time reporting. And so when you look at, these benefits and the areas that are impactful to the organization, it really does ultimately drive that employee retention as well and satisfaction there. Jamie, let's move on to the next slide here, and I'll really kind of break it down as we kind of come to a close here, and kind of bring things to an end. Is a lot of people will ask, like, well, what's your guys' experience? How is it you guys have provided some of these best practices, or what's your experience inside the industry? And so we figure we just give you just a really quick overview, or kind of highlight where we come from and the impact that we may be able to have upon your organization. Is it, we take a look at what we bring to the table to really assist and help you out. We've been doing this for about 15 years. Yuvos has been around for a long time. We really were one of the top organizations that helped Oracle. There's a lot of ERPs and HCM platforms that are out there. Oracle is a platform that we just particularly work with just singly, and all of our consultants are really wrapped around this platform. So you get a specialty of information that comes along with our expertise. We've been recognized in some different areas in helping assist Oracle clients and helping them be successful, not just for a go live, but actually post go live, and helping them leverage the system to the best of their ability. But what we really, I think the value that we bring to the table is we're not just specific to one application like an HCM or an ERP, but we really do the whole gamut that affects organizations. So that could be employee or enterprise performance management, all the way down to a customer experience, and leveraging those areas. Jamie, anything you want to add, or Mike, to our experience and background here?
I think to your point, Kevin, the ability to manage that full scope of what Oracle can do, particularly in senior care organizations, you do talk about more and more about the customer experience, and how do you draw the resident experience and improve things and coordinate at a larger level. So for those larger organizations that need to coordinate that aspect of their business, that's a good component as well. So it really gives the ability for an organization to be flexible and to grow over time and take advantage of what they do. And as you mentioned, Kevin, we do have the ability to support long-term those customers that want that additional assistance to take advantage of the enhancements that roll out and continue to get that value and drive those KPIs.
Absolutely. Yeah. You'll see here, I won't spend much time. You heard us talk, obviously. We weaved a few of our customer stories, throughout our presentation here. This is just kind of a race car slide of companies we work with. Again, healthcare is really one of our strongest pillars here at Yuvos. We really do specialize a lot inside the senior care. So you've heard us tell stories today about Care One, the Parker Life and LHC Group, which are phenomenal organizations, and there's a lot of great stories to be told from this slide here. But as we come to a close and kind of bring things together, I guess maybe just a quick overview of what we're taking a look at, and all the struggles that are out there from a technology standpoint, from a human capital type situation, is really kind of bringing this into what's important. Where is senior care seeing the most impact from trying to make changes and speed up the business process or the ability to do business. And so as we look at some of these important points, right, like a single data model, having a unified platform, right, really does help eliminate some of the number of applications that an organization may be using. And that's important from a security standpoint, right? As we're managing data in this new digital age, being able to have, a unified platform is very important. But taking and really going to that next level or that next step in that transformation is having mobile access, right? You heard us talk about, physicians wanting access to information, vendors being able to access, their invoices from an AP standpoint. And really, the story around using digital assistants, right, for that automation process is a big deal. And ultimately, what we want you to understand, right, is that there, amongst all the craziness that's taking place, that there is a path, that there is a journey, and it is clear, and that there are people out there that are experienced in helping organizations make this transformation. And so ultimately, we would love to be able to help you out and to be able to have further conversations if that's something that you want to explore. We love what we do, and we love this industry of healthcare and senior care. And so we really feel like there's a lot that we could add to the organization in helping you understand what your journey may look like. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Jamie and Mike for any of their closing thoughts.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. And to that point, we've talked about a lot of things relative to your current environment and your current business processes. And we're here to talk with you and sit down and evaluate what your current solution is and help you identify opportunities moving forward. So Mike, Kevin, and I are all here to assist and have that conversation. So as one of the follow-ups to today's session, we'll be sending out the recording link and the like, so you'll have our contact information, but please don't hesitate to take us up on that opportunity to evaluate what you're doing today. Mike, any comments before I close with some questions?
No, I would say that, just summarizing here, reach out to us for sure. We've got great experience in this industry. We've done this many, many times. And, we've been implementing the cloud solution since it first came out. So we're very experienced at it, and we bring the industry knowledge in healthcare to really bring those best practices and those consultative advice to you in the process. So again, don't hesitate to reach out.
Great, thanks. Hey, Kevin, I do have a question here that I got, and it was around the KPIs. And how do we develop those? Do we work with the client to understand their business and then figure out what the best KPIs are for them?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, you obviously heard me talk a little about our library that we've established, earlier. So there's a really good chance that if there's a key performance indicator inside your organization that you're looking at tracking, we most likely have probably created something that would either directly match what it is you're looking at doing or come pretty close. But in the event that it is something that's outside, you heard me talk a little about earlier that we will sit down and we will scope that out, right? We'll understand what it is that you're trying to track. We'll look at those benchmarks and how we want to measure that KPI, and ultimately build that for you inside the platform so you can leverage that. And it's important. I think that's a great question, Jamie, right? Because a lot of organizations really feel like, hey, they're doing some things that are very unique to their business or very unique to how they have things set up. So we do have our consultants are very I guess educated in that process, and really can help hone in and drive whatever it is that the organization is looking to capture and understand from that standpoint. So very good question.
Great, thanks, Kevin. And then the other question I had that we received was around the chatbots. And you mentioned the example with Ecumen using the chatbots. Are we talking about using a smartphone? You know, Siri and Google and Alexis and stuff like that? Is that what we're talking about here?
Kind of similar, right? A chatbot is something that's typically built into the system, and so it's popped up. It could be leveraged for inquiries, right? So you heard us talk, earlier about Ecumen and how they were using chatbots to basically push out, invoice information to their vendors. You also heard me talk a little bit about, how chatbots are leveraged from an HR perspective, right? So the chatbot can engage somebody while they're on their phone, like you said. If somebody's on the website, let's say you have a candidate that's looking at applying for a job, and let's say it's outside of business hours or even during business hours, that chatbot can pop up, ask what it is that they're looking for. So if there's a certain position, the chatbot can go and basically leverage the system and pull that information for them. It'll assist in grabbing the resume and pushing that to the HR department. And so really what happens is these chatbots allow your vendors, even people inside the organization maybe looking for a report, but more particularly people outside the organization, to really feel like they're getting direct interaction, live interaction with the organization, which from a recruiting standpoint in HR, we're seeing that is an area that's really highly impactful. It frees up a lot of time for people inside the HR department, but more importantly, helps them continue that process of grabbing candidates, managing them throughout the hiring process. So very good question. Jamie, have you seen, maybe to kind of turn that question back, have you seen that used from a financial side in some way? I just kind of explained some of the HR stuff, but what about from a financial side?
Yeah, absolutely, Kevin. I think in some cases we're seeing examples where people are asking about the status of their budget report or where they sit within budget for a particular month or quarter so that they can see their financials. They can raise requisitions. They can check on the status of an order that's being delivered. There's a whole host of them. And, even as simple as the day-to-day things to make employees' lives easier, checking on the status of that requisition, checking on the, how many days of PTO do they have left? And even saying, I want to take off from February 1st to February 8th. And putting in the requisition without even stopping. One of the things, and that's the key, is it's without stopping. We're talking about moving away from a desktop. We're talking about people moving through the organization, managing what they need to do, and not having to stop at a desktop computer to make things happen. And that's where we talk about that pushing the business out to the edges of the organization and beyond. So for those organizations that are doing home health and other kinds of home care services and the like, those same team members can be connected and can help facilitate the process from there as well. And that's what's really exciting. And that's when we talk about technology, solving business issues, that's where it gets really exciting.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point and good insight. I just had one more question too that came in here, Jamie. You touched on it just kind of briefly throughout the presentation, but we didn't really have anything put in there. But a question that's here and oftentimes come up is a scheduling, right? The question is, scheduling seems to be an issue, in amongst our organization. Do you guys have any solutions for scheduling? So I don't know if you want to touch on that one.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Kevin. I alluded to it, but didn't jump into it any further. And I apologize, but good catch for whoever was asking the question. Yes, Evosys has actually built a staff scheduling solution in conjunction with the Oracle HCM solution. It's not something that Oracle has built to this point, but we had a lot of our customers asking for it and recognizing the need. So this is a 24/7 scheduling solution that gives the ability to put the tool into that smartphone, in the hands of the smartphone. So You can check schedules, you can update schedules, you can take additional shifts. There's a whole host of capabilities. So yes, it is something that we recognize, particularly in the healthcare industry, that's critical to be able to manage that 24/7. And we've seen it used in multiple industries that have to deliver staffing at a 24/7 level.
Very good. Yeah, I mean, we've seen, I think this be a great success for organizations that, especially, as we talked about the war on talent and kind of, grabbing people, covering shifts, right? Looking at open shifts or being able to make themselves available to grab, shifts outside of what maybe their schedule is also great. But I think more importantly, what we've seen that's been a great benefit is allows the employee to kind of interact from a scheduling standpoint, to put what their availability is, to request certain time off or holidays, whatever that may be. But it really, we've seen it kind of save a couple organizations from allowing people to jump in and like we talked about, grab extra shifts from that standpoint. So it's a great tool, and if it's something you're interested in, we'd love to show you a demo or help out from that perspective. Jamie, I'm not seeing any other questions. Do you have anything else that's out there from your end?
I don't have any others. Just like to thank everybody for joining us today. Mike, Kevin, thank you as well, and being a part of today's session. And again, let us help evaluate your current solution and identify where your business opportunities might lie. Thank you,
Thanks a lot.
everybody.
Awesome. Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate it.